Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome to Unity of Kern County on this 11th day of July, 2021. And I'm Reverend Chuck, and today we're going to look at another teaching from the Master Teacher, Jesus, and see how it can be applied in our lives today. Now, of course, the materials that I share with you each Sunday are based upon the spiritual principles and lessons taught by Jesus and Unity of Worldwide Ministries, as well as my 28 plus years as an ordained Unity minister. And of course, each Sunday we take a moment to honor that presence of God that lives in us, around us, and through us as we pray the Charles Fillmore prayer in the presence. I am now in the presence of pure being, and immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. I acknowledge your power and presence, Blessed Spirit. In your divine wisdom, now erase my mortal limitations, and from your pure substance of love, bring into manifestation my world according to your perfect law. And so it is. Well, the writer of Luke 6:38 has Jesus giving a lesson. And this lesson is on the benefits of giving. And this is what he had to say. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you give, the measure you will get. And I have to wonder that, Jesus being God's spokesperson, this is coming directly from God through Jesus. And of course, how do we know that? Well, the author of John 12:49 makes this very statement. I don't speak on my own authority, says Jesus. It is the Father who sent me, who commands me what to say and how to say it. And that pretty well sums it up. Jesus was here to do God's will. And he was always giving people little gems of wisdom and insight. In fact, these little bits of gems were like gifts that they could use not only for themselves, but to bless others that were around them. So for me, when I look at all the things that Jesus taught about, and I look deeply into the message behind the statements, I look for that gift. Because, like he said, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, the information will be given to you. So, what is that gift so neatly wrapped up in this one message about giving? Well, for me, it comes down to this. Giving is God's idea for thriving. The gift, God's idea for thriving. Jesus constantly reminded us always to go to God first. If there had a need, and to others as we were guided to do so. Well, why was this so important for people to not only understand, but to practice? Well, I believe since Jesus was God's spokesperson, he knew and understood that God was and always will be the source of all our good. For he even taught that it was the Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. And not only that, that our Father knew our needs before we even asked. And I think that gift lies within that truth and within those teachings that Jesus gave us, because it shows us what we have to do, what our responsibility is, what our ability to do in order to create a giving consciousness. As God freely gives, we too must freely give. Now, there are three spiritual principles, I believe, that Jesus wove into his teachings about giving. And when they are understood, applied, and practiced in our lives, will help us build a giving consciousness that Jesus taught about. Principle number one is a reminder of sorts that the universe works on a give and take. It's called the law of mind action. Whatever you put out there, you're going to get back. And that's is summed up in the very beginning. What you give, you will get. What you give, you will get. So we have to ask ourselves, do we like what we're getting? Because if we don't, then we have to stop and think, what are we giving to the universe? What are we putting out there? What are our thoughts? What are our actions? You know, in today's world, we see it coming about all the time. Hate is given out and it is returned. Greed is rampant and that being returned. You know, mistrust is given and unforgiveness is given and contempt is constantly given. And that list can go on and on and on. These are the negative activities and actions of people in the human condition. We don't have to look far because we see it playing out time and time again in people's lives. And it returns to us when we give that way, in the negative mindset, when we use that and give that way, yeah, people are going to respond because that's how the universe works. Whatever we throw out there, there's always somebody there to give it back to us. So can it be turned around? Well, I believe it can. And Jesus taught it could. Because whatever you want, you have to give. So if you want more love, you got to give love. If you want more trust, you have to be more trusting. If you want forgiveness, you have to be more forgiving. If you want to be understood, then you have to be more understanding. You have to give those activities. You have to allow other people the opportunity to respond. And of course, that list also goes on and on and on. Principle number 2, keep in mind that we are going to get back what we put out there. And sometimes we get back more, as Jesus stated, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into our laps. So I want more of the good stuff. I don't know about you, but I want more of the good stuff. So I keep putting out the good stuff. And I do it without being asked. That's another key to principle number 2. You do it without being asked, and you do it without any sense of return. You do it for the sake of doing. For as you give, so you get. And believe me, I have been blessed. Through these many years, I have definitely been blessed by people coming out of nowhere to bless me with all kinds of goodness. So the question for us is always and will always be, do we want the good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over to our laps to be positive? Or do we want it to be negative? Principle 3 is to seek God first in all things. Go to God first. Go to God first. Seek God in all things. Make God your partner. Why? Because God already knows your needs. And so if you want things to come to you, you have to give. That is why Jesus kept telling him to go. Well, before you did anything, before any event, any activity, go to God first. Sit in the silence. Pray to God who will hear in silence and then reward you. Because it's important that we open ourselves up to the allness of God. The allness of God as the source of all that we would ever desire. And all the good that God has already prepared for us. but we must develop a giving consciousness in order to receive it. As we give to God all that is good, that good will be returned to us. Now, co-founder of Unity, Charles Fillmore, had this to say about giving. Giving is a grace, he writes, that adds to the spiritual growth of all humanity in all times. Without giving, the soul shrivels. But when giving is practiced, he writes, the soul expands and becomes God-like in the grace of generosity. It's something to think about. When we give, we in fact are giving God's gift to the world. And that gift is, again, God's idea for thriving. And the secret to giving the gift is to have no thought of how it's going to be returned. All that is required in developing that consciousness is to practice and to give for the sake of giving. It's going to be returned. That's the law. It will be returned. So you don't have to sit and wonder where. When you start to sit and wonder where your good's going to come from you, then you become anxious. And then the mind goes into the dark side, as they say. And so we want to always stay attuned to God's good. Remember, we're also threefold human beings. We are physical, we are mental, and we are spiritual. And therefore, as we practice giving, we must also realize that part of creating that giving consciousness is to activate those three areas of our lives. In his book, Give to Live, How Giving Can Change Your Life, Dr. Douglas Lawson states, there are many benefits to having a giving consciousness. Number one, the physical benefits. They are greater longevity, sufficient reduction in toxic stress and the chemicals within the body, enhanced functioning of the immune system, decreased metabolic rate, improved cardiovascular circulation, healthier sleep, and all of this helping us to maintain good health and a sense of well-being. Number two, the mental emotional benefits, he writes, are increased self-acceptance, reduced self-absorption, a sense of isolation, increased endorphins, expanded sense of control over one's life and circumstances, increased ability to cope with crisis, stronger feelings of personal satisfaction, improved concentration, enjoyment of the experiences, enhanced compassion, empathy, sensitivity to others, and reduced inner stress and conflict. And number three, the spiritual benefits are greater connectedness to God, more receptivity to spiritual guidance, added involvement in charitable activity, heightened sense of appreciation, acceptance of others, sustained peace of mind, greater clarity about meaning and the purpose of life, and enhanced quality of life. Three very important areas of our lives that we need to pay attention to. And through developing a giving consciousness, we are able to bless all three of those areas. So how can you start creating a giving consciousness so that you can feel those amazing returns, both physically, mentally, and spiritually? Well, here are some things that we can all do. Number one is to give an act of kindness to someone on a daily basis and watch how it returns to you tenfold. No particular reason, you just do it. You see something and you just do it. And you'd be amazed how that can come back to you. Number two, giving of your time, talents, and treasures in a form of your energy, your wisdom, your skills, your talents to others that may be in need of maybe a mentor or a guide or an advocate or a confidant. You'd be surprised how all that comes back to bless you. 3, give others the respect that you would like in return. Show up when invited to an activity or an event. Be on time. Offer to help where the need may be. 4, give of your treasure thoughtfully. Just because someone asks you to give money, be sure that it's for the right reasons and that it aligns with your spiritual cause or causes that you embrace and support. And 5, give thanks to God. Always giving thanks to God for your ability to give that gift of time, talents, and treasures so that others may thrive. So until next week, I leave you with this affirmation. As a child of God and heir to the kingdom, I freely give my time, my talents, my treasures, so that God's idea for thriving brings abundant blessings of every good kind into my life and affairs, so that I can be a blessing to others. Well, folks, if at any time you have a question about the materials that I cover, please feel free to contact me, of course, on Messenger through Facebook, or my email at revchuckunity@yahoo.com. And I want to thank all of you who follow me on Facebook or YouTube at Unity of Kern County. And for those that have asked for a mailing address, it is 903 Mona, that's Monna Avenue, Bakersfield, California, 93308. So until next time, next week, remember to be good to yourself and others. God bless you, dear friends.